Alrighty, guys, welcome to my living room. We're going to go over our lesson for this week, which is 5 movements every program needs. And the point of this lesson is it's not going to explain like how to make your own programs entirely, but we could probably actually make a series out of this. But one thing you have to know that when you're making your own programs is there are like a classification of different movements, and aside from certain exceptions, in almost every case you ever write a program, every case I wrote a program for clients, or if I'm having someone write my own programs, which I do right now, Susan Niebergall writes my programs right now. But what you can expect to see in those programs, no matter how they're laid out, no matter like what type of format you're doing, even what the goal is, or any of these stuff that can change, what split you're using, how many days a week you work out, and we're going to show you a couple examples on the whiteboard in a bit. But it'll make things a lot clearer when we get on the whiteboard. But in all cases, these 5 movements will exist. They'll be in the program, aside from injury situations or maybe specific situations, like if someone's an athlete and they need to bias their programs towards different things. But in most cases, you're going to see these 5 that I'll go over in a second. There are different ones, which I'll talk about as well. And there is some like detail we can play into it, but we're going to keep it pretty simple today, and I'll talk a little bit about that detail. But the movements are push, pull, squat, hinge, and lunge. So these are all like familiar words. Push and pull generally just refers to pulling would be your row variations, and chin-ups and lat pull-downs. Your push exercises would be presses, push-ups, and different examples like that, whether it's like an overhead press or whether it's a bench press. All these exercises are just the arms going and pushing away, or a push-up, which is very obvious as well. Squat that you're familiar of. Hinge, which is different from a squat, which is more or less like deadlift variations, but we can also play like different exercises that involve more hip bend than knee bend, whereas the squat involves knee bend and hip bend at more equal amounts. And lunge, you can think of what a lunge looks like. I tend to put split squats, which are like a little bit an easier progression from lunges, into the lunge category, not into the squat category, because I just think they look a lot more similar and they kind of play into a progression plan a lot easier. But those 5 movements fit into every program somehow, some way. You're going to see them in every one, and if you're designing programs that make sense, that's what you're going to see. Now the other ones that are in here, like core, carry variations, if you think suitcase carries and farmer carries, crawling, so like if you think of a bear crawl, or different like, or even just like different ground-based exercises like Turkish get-ups and stuff, that's a little bit more like, that's more like athletic oriented and not stuff you need to necessarily worry about with every single program. And then mobility stuff, which is stuff we can throw in between workouts or do before them or after them. But let's keep it basic here. The only thing I'll say about push and pull is vertical pull, horizontal pull makes a difference, and you probably want both in all your programs, but it depends a little bit, which we can talk about in different lessons after this. So what we're going to do is we're going to get on the whiteboard and show you a little bit about some examples, and then we're going to show you the video of these workouts that are going to be classified within these 5. And when we get on the whiteboard, it's going to make a lot of sense in terms of just like seeing how an example plays out. So we'll check that out now. All right, so what we got here is a 3-day program and just an example day. So in a 3-day program, we typically would do a whole body. You don't have to, but we're just giving an example right now. So if you were doing a 3-day strength training program, each day would typically be a whole body day where you're hitting the whole body. So we got hips, lower body, arms, shoulders, upper back, chest, shoulders, triceps, squat, quads, hips, glutes and hamstrings, and lunge, which would be typically glutes, hamstrings, and quads. So basically the whole body is being hit with a few amount of exercises. A, B, C, D, E just means you're doing the sets for this exercise, all 3 of them. then move, or all 3 or 4, how many sets you're doing, and then moving on to the next exercise, rather than supersets would be more of like an A1, A2, where you do a set from one exercise and then the other. We're just keeping it simple. That's what I mean when you can change, like the format of the program can change in all types of ways. I don't usually write programs like this. I actually more or less rely on supersets and trisets with client programs, but just keeping it simple here. All 5 exercises are taken in, or all 5 movements, I mean. You don't have to, like, there could be more than 5 exercises in the workout. There could be less than 5 exercises in the workout, because let's be real. If there's 5 movements we need and we got 3 days to do it, and you choose 4 exercises or 3 exercises per workout, you can end up covering all 5, and maybe like in certain cases you could have more hinges and more pulls, because those typically are the ones that people need more of. You probably need more glutes and hamstrings, and you probably need more upper back rather than pushing and squats and that type of thing. So just an example here, and the reason why I got these arrows is because I'm just going to show you an example of how like you kind of plug in these movement categories with actual exercises. So, and the ways like someone like myself would decide what exercise someone gets is their level of advancement, their skill with movement. They're like, if you're a beginner, you're choosing easier exercises. There's a ton of variations you can choose depending on someone's needs. Like that's just like outside the scope of this this video. But basically hinge, we're talking about like I let hip thrust fall into the hinge category, but the best example is deadlift. So I'm going to start off with just like a trap bar deadlift. But this could be conventional deadlift. This could be like all kinds of deadlift variations. So don't get too obsessed with what we're doing here. Way worse. Deadlift. And then you'd have your sets and your reps, 3 sets of 6, 3 sets of 8, whatever it may be. A pull, we could go with lat pull down. Whoops. Pull down. Maybe 3 sets of 12 or something like that. And usually what you'll see, and this is again outside the scope of this, but as you go down, you'll usually see the reps go higher, more strength focused at the start, and as you go along, it goes a little bit higher on the rep side of things. Push could be like a dumbbell bench press or a push-up. And we'll say push-up. Push-up 3 times 15 or something like that. Squat, goblet squat is an easy one. It's good for beginners, but also useful for all types of people. And then lunge, let's say walking lunge, those are hell for most people. So basically, from a template that I would use, and I've got basically all kinds of different templates I can use with clients that look different or potentially even the same as this. We plug in exercise variations based on someone's goals, based on someone's level of advancement and experience, exercises they like. Different injuries can play into the different variations we would plug in here. Like someone might have a lower back issue that flares up when we use a conventional deadlift, so trap bar is a little bit easier on the back. If someone wants a more core-oriented workout, their push exercises may be less machine-based or less like dumbbell bench press with both arms. We might do a one-arm dumbbell bench press, which has a rotational component to it, or a push-up, which is basically like a plank as they do the push-up. So there's a lot of different reasons why we might plug certain exercises into it. But as far as the scope of this video goes, we've got these movements here and we plug them in. Now we'll go over a 4-day program to give you a little bit more context to kind of see this concept in play. All right, cool. Now, so what we got here is a 4-day program, and I've got examples of a lower day and an upper day. Usually on a 4-day program, and what's practical for most people is lower, upper, lower, upper. So I'm just gonna give you 2 examples because it's, you don't need to see the whole program to get an idea of what I'm talking about here. I did throw in a wrinkle. These would be supersets. So in this case, you would do a set of this exercise and a set of, and then right after you'd go to set of this exercise, and after that you would go back to the first one. So you do a set, do the other set, take a break, and then go back to the first one. And if you do that, for 3 sets, you do 3 different times. It's a little bit different than the straight sets I showed you in the earlier example. So, and core, I threw that in here just because when you're making actual programs, you are gonna end up with those like core and mobility stuff filtered through in. But But what you can see here is we've covered all 5 movements right here, right here, right here, and right here. On the upper side, I got horizontal and vertical, and the reason for that is like now that we've got more, upper body exercises in one workout, we do differentiate a little bit between the actual mechanics of a row this way and like a lat pull down or a chin up, or a press overhead versus a push this way, or a dumbbell bench press or a bench press. So there is a little bit of a difference, but at the end of the day, they're pushes and they're pulls. One's going horizontal, one's going, and then there's tons of variation between. But don't let that confuse you too much. And as far as a 4-day program, you're gonna see lower, upper. Usually I write my programs longer than this. There's usually 4 more, but 2 to 4 more exercises in them. I do use supersets a lot. The main reason you use supersets is usually just time economy, because you can get more work done when you're training opposite exercises, although this wouldn't be opposite exercises. There's tons of different ways you can do this stuff. I'm just trying to give you a sense of how we have these movements in place and how we plug them in. So again, you can go deadlift variation, maybe do a hip thrust. Some people would disagree with me that a hip thrust is a hinge and all this stuff, but what I'm trying to get a sense of is you're using more of a hip dominant exercise for the hinge. You throw in a core exercise, maybe a plank, maybe a dead bug, maybe like a side plank or some sort of Pallof press, or all kinds of, like, the list of variations that you have that can get plugged into these is basically endless. We're constantly adding to it. It is thousands and thousands deep. However, the ones you're going to use the most of is probably like more of a list of 100 to 200 that you can plug in, but there's just tons of different ways you can vary exercises, which is another video in itself. Squat, if you want to throw in a front squat. Lunge, you could do you might even throw a split squat in there or something like that, which is what I do. But if you want to think more of a lunge, do forward lunge, reverse lunge, lateral lunge, that type of thing. Horizontal push, let's say bench press. Horizontal pull, let's say the row machine or a seated cable row maybe, and vertical push, we're thinking, overhead press. With vertical pull, we're thinking chin up or lat pull down again. So that's how you're plugging these exercises in, and just wanted to give you some examples so you can see actually what it looks like, so you can start to think. And maybe in the notes below, I'll kind of give you some templates that you can actually use. So other than that, that's kind of like what we're looking at here with regards to how to use these movements. And if you are making your own programs, to think, have I covered all my bases? And the reason why we do this is because, posturally speaking, if the common example, whether this applies to you or not, is like when you're like 16 years old and you're a guy and you go into the gym and all you do is bench press, your posture ends up playing to the muscle imbalances you're creating. So when you're not doing this as well with row variations, different pulling variations, these muscles get so strong. So what's happening is muscles connect to your joint, like connect to the bones on different sides of the joints, and the ones that get stronger and shorter, if your training isn't balanced, if you're not equaling push and pull and that type of stuff, what's going to happen is the muscles on this side will pull the joint in this direction more, and ends up, you see these rounded postures and this type of stuff, or people that walk around like this because their glutes don't hold them up. So that's why we want to make sure that our programs are balanced and hold all these movements together, because that way you look better as you train. Like, you don't train in a way that ends up just making you kind of look like a Neanderthal caveman or something. You actually not only lose fat, add muscle, but stand up straighter and that type of thing. And that's why this is so important, is because if you're not doing that, you're going to kind of look worse as you train more.